In the next few minutes, my family will either face their reckoning or fall deeper into their own lies. As I sit here, the steady hum of the dinner table, the clink of silverware, and the familiar murmur of voices around me feel strangely distant, like I'm watching from behind a veil. I could reach out, shatter the glass that separates me from them, and reveal the truth that's been growing inside me for years. But for now, I remain calm, composed. The silence between us speaks volumes. The smile on my face is practiced, a mask that hides everything I've kept buried. Tonight, I will let it all spill out, and when I do, there will be no turning back. The family dinner table, a place meant for connection, shared laughter, and the comfort of knowing you belong, has become a stage for my own personal unraveling. There's a part of me that wonders if they've noticed the cracks in the facade, the subtle ways my demeanor has shifted, the hints of something darker just beneath the surface, but I won't let them see it yet. For now, I'm in control. My parents talk about work. My sister comments on her latest trip abroad, and I nod along, careful not to give anything away. But in the back of my mind, I'm calculating the exact moment I'll drop the bombshell. This dinner, this moment, it's bigger than any of them can comprehend, and I will be the one to make them understand. As my family chatters on about mundane things, my mother's latest obsession with organic vegetables, my father's endless work-related ramblings, my sister's tales of a new romance abroad, I sit back, the weight of their voices a dull hum in the background. I could join in, I could laugh along, but I don't. Not tonight. Not when everything feels like it's teetering on the edge of something far more significant than any of them could possibly grasp. My eyes scan the table, taking in the familiar faces I've known my entire life. My mother, her tight smile betraying her anxiety. My father, with his posture so perfectly composed, like a man who's convinced that if he holds himself upright long enough, nothing will ever fall apart. And my sister, her eyes shining with the excitement of a world she's experienced without us. Always the golden child, always the one who could do no wrong. And then there's me, calm, collected, but simmering with a truth that I've been carrying for far too long. We've always had our little rituals around the dinner table, quiet exchanges of looks, unspoken judgments that pass between us without a word. But tonight, something is different. The tension that hangs in the air is palpable, as though the very walls of this room know something's about to shift. They don't know it yet, but this is the last dinner we'll ever have as we are now. A long silence stretches as my mother sets down her wine glass, her fingers trembling slightly before she brings it back to her lips. My father notices the tremor, his eyes narrowing, but he says nothing. He's always been the stoic one, the one who believes in the power of silence. But I can tell. He feels it too. The walls are closing in on us. I've been thinking, my sister says, her voice breaking the quiet. Maybe we should take a trip together, all of us, somewhere we've never been. Her words feel hollow, like she's trying to glue us all back together with the same superficial gestures we've used for years. I look at her, my mind swirling with the knowledge of what's coming. Her innocence is both infuriating and heartbreaking. She has no idea that the cracks we've been ignoring are about to tear us apart. I take a slow breath, the air tasting thick with unsaid things, and glance at my father. His eyes flick to mine, just for a moment, but it's enough. A silent understanding passes between us. He knows that something's different, that tonight isn't like the others. But what he doesn't know, what none of them know, is that the truth I'm about to share will change everything. My calm demeanor remains, but it's a mask now, more fragile than I'd like to admit. I know what's coming, and though I'm not sure they're ready for it, there's no turning back now. The room falls silent the moment I slide the envelope across the table. The motion is deliberate, the sound of it sliding across the polished wood almost deafening in its quiet simplicity. My family watches, their eyes tracking the envelope as though it's some foreign object that doesn't belong in the familiar comfort of our dinner table. And in a way, it doesn't. This moment, this truth, is as alien to them as the words I'm about to speak. I feel the weight of their gaze, the flicker of confusion in their eyes as they look from the envelope to me. I could almost hear their thoughts. What is this? What's happening? The sharp glint of the dinner knives and forks suddenly feels like a world away from the calm that once defined this space. I sit still, my posture perfect, my hands folded in front of me as I wait. There is no turning back now. Finally, my mother reaches for the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly as she picks it up. She holds it in her hands for a moment, turning it over, then glancing at me, a look of growing concern in her eyes. She's trying to make sense of what she's holding, but she won't understand until I say the words. I clear my throat, the silence pressing in on me like a physical force, and I speak, my voice firm and steady, each word deliberate. You wanted the truth, I say, my gaze steady on each of them in turn. So here it is. My mother's hand hovers over the envelope, and for the briefest moment I wonder if she'll open it or if she'll drop it altogether. But she doesn't. She pulls the flap open slowly, the paper inside crackling as she pulls out the documents, photocopies, pages, and pages of legal records, all connected by a single, irrefutable truth. My father shifts in his chair, his eyes narrowing, as he watches her read. His mouth tightens, but he doesn't speak. He never speaks at moments like these. When the truth is too close to the surface, he becomes a master of silence. But it's not the silence of calm, it's the silence of someone who is terrified of what's coming. My mother's breath catches as she reads through the papers, and then her hands start to shake. Her face blanches as if she's seen something that doesn't belong to her, something unthinkable. She looks up, her eyes wide with disbelief. What is this? She whispers, but the question is already rhetorical. Read it, I say, my voice low but unshaken. It's all there. Her gaze shifts from the papers to me, but she doesn't say a word. It's not necessary. The truth is staring us all in the face. The papers show a DNA test, the results clearly marked in black and white. I am not the child of the man sitting across from me. I am not his blood. The tension in the room is palpable, thick enough to choke on. My mother is still frozen, unable to process what she's reading, but it's the look in my father's eyes that is the most telling. The way his jaw tightens, the slight tick in his hand, betrays him. He's no longer the composed figure he's always tried to be. This is his undoing. I don't wait for them to recover. I press on, my voice unwavering despite the storm of emotions crashing inside me. The test was done last month, I say. It wasn't easy. I had my doubts, but I needed to know. I'm not yours, Dad. I'm not your daughter. The words fall into the air, heavy and final, and as they do, the world seems to stop for a moment. I can hear the blood pounding in my ears, feel the weight of their shocked, disbelieving gazes on me. My mother looks as if she's been struck, her mouth open, her hands trembling as she holds the papers like they might fly away. My father doesn't say anything. Not yet. His silence is more deafening than anything he could say. His eyes meet mine, dark and full of something I can't quite place. The anger, the shame, the guilt. It's all there, but it's buried deep beneath his stoic facade. You've known, haven't you? I ask, not needing an answer. That's why you never really connected with me. You always kept your distance, and I could feel it. My mother's eyes flick to him, then back to me, as though trying to reconcile the two versions of her world, the one she's known for years, and the one that's shattering before her. I'm not sure what she sees in my face. Maybe the anger I've buried so long, the hurt that I've kept hidden from them, but something in her face changes. The denial begins, but I can hear the cracks in her voice as she turns to my father. Number, this can't be true. There must be some mistake. My father stands up abruptly, knocking his chair back in the process. His hand grips the edge of the table, knuckles white, and for the first time in my life, I see him as a man who's lost control. There's no mistake, I say, standing now, my voice cold, cutting through the suffocating air. I've known for years. You lied to me. You lied to all of us. His eyes flick to my mother, a silent plea. But she's already looking at him with the same mix of disbelief and growing fury. I don't know how to fix this, my father says finally, his voice low, almost a whisper. I don't know if I can. And that, in that moment, is the final blow. The betrayal, The lies that have been building for so long. It cuts deeper than I ever expected. Not because of the revelation itself, but because of the people I thought I knew, the people I thought I could trust, standing there, broken in the face of their own guilt. I stand there, my body tense, my heart pounding in my chest. The room is thick with the suffocating silence that follows an explosion. The weight of the truth is pressing down on all of us, and for the first time, I feel like I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm not looking for validation or forgiveness. I'm simply stating the facts. You never thought I would find out, did you? My voice is steady, though inside I feel a storm raging. You thought I would stay in the dark, like a good little girl, waiting for you to pull the strings, guiding me with your lies. I glance at each of them. My mother, my father, my sister, and then my father again. His silence betraying everything he refuses to admit. I've spent my life trying to earn your approval, to be what you wanted me to be. I was loyal to you, trusted you, believed in the family we were supposed to be. I take a slow, deliberate step forward, eyes focused on my mother. She's sitting there, frozen in disbelief, the papers still in her hands as if they were some kind of shield she could hide behind. But I'm done hiding, and I'm done pretending that everything is okay. The truth is right there in front of her, but she refuses to see it. She's terrified to see it. Mira, I say, my voice cutting through the stillness, you were supposed to be my protector. You were supposed to be the one who understood. Instead, you've been standing by, letting this whole thing unfold, complicit in every lie they've told me. Mira's face flushes, her hand gripping the edge of her chair. I didn't know. How could I know? I never... Stop. I cut her off. Stop pretending like you didn't know. You saw how he treated me, the distance he put between us, the way he always favored you. How long did you think I wouldn't see it? How long did you think I wouldn't notice? She opens her mouth, but the words don't come out, like she's lost the script she's been following all these years. I don't need her to speak. I know the truth. We all do now. I turn away from her, facing my father, whose silence has grown more oppressive by the second. I've always admired how he could stay calm, how he could handle the worst of situations with a facade of control. But now that same silence feels like a betrayal of the child he never bothered to protect, a betrayal of the person he claimed to love. You've said nothing this whole time, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. Not a word, not even an explanation. You've allowed this lie to persist because it was easier for you to pretend I didn't matter. Easier for you to pretend that your perfect little family wasn't fractured at the core. He doesn't answer, and that's all I need to know. The lack of words is louder than anything he could have said. The guilt that simmers beneath his silence is as clear as day. You've always had the power, I continue, but you never used it to protect me. You never used it to make me feel like I was anything more than an afterthought. I was never your daughter. You didn't care about me. Not in the way I needed you to. The dam I've been holding back for so long bursts, and I no longer care about the consequences. My voice shakes with the pain I've held on to for years, but there is a sense of clarity too. A certain peace that settles in me as I say the words I've never been able to say before. You used me, I tell him, my gaze unwavering. You used me to fill a role in your life, but I was never your child. I was a duty, an obligation, something to be managed, and for the longest time, I let you. I let you make me think that this was love. My father's face hardens, and for the first time, I see him show something. Anger, maybe, or shame. But he doesn't say a word. The silence between us is unbearable, and yet I realize, in that moment, that it speaks volumes. There's nothing he can say that will undo what's been done. I look to my mother again. Her face is pale, her eyes wet with unshed tears, but there is something colder in her expression now, something that wasn't there before. She's not crying for me. She's crying for herself. She's crying because she knows that everything I've said is true. She knows she's complicit in this web of deceit. The air in the room feels thin, as if all the oxygen has been sucked out and we're left gasping for breath. The weight of the lies we've all been living under is too much, and the silence that follows feels suffocating. None of them have the courage to speak, to confront the truths I've just laid out in front of them. And that's when it hits me. I never mattered to them, not in the way I thought I did. The love I craved, the validation I desperately wanted from my parents, was never real. I was never a priority. I was always second, always a consolation prize for a family that never truly cared about who I was. I was a side story in their perfect lives, a piece of their narrative that they could manipulate and dismiss as they saw fit. The realization stings, so much sharper than I could have ever anticipated, but it's freeing too. Because now I understand my worth. I'm not a placeholder. I'm not someone to be used, and I refuse to remain silent in the shadow of their lies any longer. I don't need you to apologize, I say, my voice steady but full of conviction. I don't need you to pretend anymore. The truth is here, and it's been here all along. I'm not asking for anything. I'm done being the person you wanted me to be. I stand tall now, the weight of the room pressing down on me less than before. It's like I've finally freed myself from the shackles I'd bound myself with all these years, and for the first time, I feel truly seen. Not by them, but by myself. The silence continues, thick and suffocating, but it no longer holds the same power over me. I've said what needed to be said, and now, for the first time in my life, I'm free. I don't wait for anyone to speak. I don't need to hear their apologies or their excuses. The words they might offer won't change anything. They're just noise now, just remnants of the facade we've all been living under. With a slow, deliberate movement, I push my chair back, the scrape of it against the floor echoing through the silence. My eyes don't linger on any of them. I don't want to see their faces, don't want to hear the unspoken pleas or the guilt in their eyes. This time, it's not about them. It's about me. I walk to the door, my footsteps steady, and as I reach for the handle, I feel the weight of 1,000 unspoken expectations lift off my shoulders. I'm not running away. I'm not retreating. I'm walking out because I've made my decision. I'm choosing silence, not as a submission, but as my liberation. For years, silence was my prison. It was the space I occupied because I didn't want to rock the boat, didn't want to be the one who disrupted the family's delicate balance. I swallowed my feelings, held my tongue, and pretended to be okay with the lies, all because it was easier than confronting the truth. But now, silence feels different. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not the quiet compliance they expected from me. It's my declaration of independence. I pull open the door, the cool air from the hallway sweeping into the room, and I pause for just a moment. The silence behind me is thick, almost tangible, but it no longer has power over me. I take a deep breath, filling my lungs with something that feels like freedom, and I step into the hallway, closing the door gently behind me. It's over. I don't belong to that family anymore, not in the way I once thought I did. Their expectations, their false hopes for what I should be will no longer define me. I don't need their validation, their approval, or their love that was never truly mine to begin with. In the quiet of the hallway, I let myself reflect. For so long, I believed that if I could just keep the peace, if I could just be the good daughter, the one who held the family together, I would finally be seen. But I was always invisible, just a background character in a story that wasn't even mine. My birthday wish, year after year, had always been the same: to be seen, truly seen, for who I was. Not as an accessory to their perfect family, not as a role they needed me to play, but as a person with my own thoughts, my own needs, my own truths. And now, as I stand in the hallway, the reality of what I've just done settles over me. For the first time, I don't need them to see me. I see myself, and that's enough. I make my way to the front door, moving with a sense of purpose that I've never felt before. The street outside is quiet, and the world feels bigger now, wider, filled with endless possibilities. It's almost like I've been holding my breath for years, and now I can finally exhale. I step outside, leaving behind the house that once represented my entire world. But that world was never mine to begin with. It was a cage built by expectations and lies. Now, it's just a place, a memory. I walk into the night, my heart lighter with each step, finally free. The days after I walked out are a blur of silence and half-hearted attempts at communication. At first, I think they'll reach out, perhaps an apology, maybe a plea for reconciliation. But nothing comes. The house I left behind remains untouched, and so does their attitude toward me. They move on as though nothing has changed, as if the truth I laid bare that night was just a fleeting moment, a storm that passed too quickly to make any real impact. At first, I wonder if they're processing it all in their own way. Maybe they need time to come to terms with everything. But then the messages start. Text after text, voicemail after voicemail. Their words are hollow, attempts to justify everything I'd exposed. My mother's voice, trembling but defensive, leaves a message explaining that she never intended for me to feel this way, that she did the best she could. "You know how much we love you," she insists, "but this is just so much to handle." The message ends without an apology, just an invitation to come back, to sit down, to talk things through. It's as if she's speaking to a stranger, someone who doesn't know the truth already. Then there's my father. His attempt at communication is even less direct. A letter, typed out in the same sterile, impersonal way he's always approached me, arrives in my inbox. It's filled with excuses, reasons for why things went the way they did, as though explaining the behavior would somehow make it all right. "We did what we thought was best," he writes. "I've always had your best interest at heart, even if it didn't seem that way." There's no admission of fault, no recognition of the hurt I've carried for years, just an explanation, a plea to come back and rebuild the relationship. Mira's messages are the most surprising. At first, she didn't contact me at all. I think she's too ashamed to face me, too scared to confront the guilt she must feel. But eventually, a text pops up on my phone, short and simple. I didn't know. I didn't know it was this bad. There's a pause, a space where an apology should be, but none comes. I wonder if she even knows what an apology feels like, if she can truly understand the weight of what she's been complicit in. And still, no one acknowledges the truth for what it is. No one addresses the lies, the manipulation, the way they all stood by while I suffered in silence. Instead, it's all justifications, weak attempts to reclaim control over a situation they never cared to fix. It would be easy to respond, to fight back with my own words, to demand accountability from each of them. But that would be the same as stepping back into the cage I so carefully dismantled. Instead, I choose silence. I don't respond to the messages, the calls, the letters. They want me to come back, to play the role they've assigned me, to forgive them in exchange for the illusion of a perfect family. But I'm not interested in that anymore. I've seen the truth, and there's no going back. They want me to fit into their world, but their world doesn't have a place for me, not for the real me, not for the person who finally sees through their facade. So I turn my attention to my own life, to the path that stretches out before me, one that's no longer defined by their expectations or their hurtful illusions. It's a road I've walked before, but only now do I understand how much freedom it holds. I take the first steps into something new, something that isn't weighed down by the past. I focus on the things I can control, my career, my health, my dreams. I reconnect with friends I've neglected, people who have always seen me for who I truly am. I explore passions I never had the courage to pursue before, knowing that I'm finally free to be myself. There are no more apologies to demand, no more familial ties that hold me hostage. I choose peace, not because I've forgiven them, but because I've chosen to live without the burden of their betrayals. As the days pass, I feel lighter. The weight of their voices, their expectations, their lies no longer echo in my mind. For the first time in years, I wake up each morning with a sense of clarity, no longer looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next emotional bombshell to drop. They may never change. They may never truly see the pain they caused. But I'm done waiting for them to acknowledge it. I no longer need their validation. I no longer need their love. I've learned to love myself in ways they never could. And that, in the end, is the greatest freedom I could ever have. I don't look back. Not because I don't care, but because I've realized that to move forward, I have to leave them behind. And that's exactly what I do. The first post I write is simple. It's raw. It's a release more than anything. A way for me to say the things I've never had the courage to voice before. I call it the betrayal beneath the silverware, because that night at the dinner table was where everything cracked wide open. The title feels fitting, like I'm pulling back the velvet curtains of my own life and exposing the truth that's been hidden beneath the polished surface. I pour out my heart in the post, recounting the ways I've been silenced. I talk about the years of holding my tongue, of being the quiet observer in a family that never really saw me. How I learned over time that my voice was expendable, that the truth was something to be avoided in favor of keeping the family happy, keeping up appearances. I don't sugarcoat anything. I don't censor my anger, my hurt, or my sense of betrayal. I lay it all bare, every tear I never cried, every word I never said. It's cathartic in a way that nothing else has ever been. The next morning, I'm surprised to see that my post has gained some traction. It's shared by a few people I don't know. Friends of friends, acquaintances, strangers. The comments are a mix of support and curiosity, but mostly there's an overwhelming sense of empathy. People understand. People have lived through their own versions of betrayal, their own quiet struggles. There's a community of voices rising around me, voices that I never knew existed, but that now feel like a chorus of solidarity. I write more, each post building on the last, sharing pieces of my life and my pain. The blog becomes a sort of journal, but one that the world can read. Slowly, it starts to gain momentum. People begin sharing their own stories in the comments, in emails, on social media. What was once a personal narrative morphs into a movement, a collective exhale from those who, like me, have been silenced for far too long. It's not just my story anymore, it's our story. The blog goes viral. The betrayal beneath the silverware becomes a phenomenon shared in groups, discussed in online forums, quoted in articles. I'm contacted by strangers, by people I never expected, who want to share their experiences with me. Some write to me with gratitude, thanking me for speaking up. Others ask for advice, for guidance on how to reclaim their own voices, how to confront the betrayals that have kept them shackled. It's strange, at first, to be seen this way. To be acknowledged not as the silent daughter, not as the background figure in a family story, but as someone who matters, as someone whose words hold weight. I'm no longer the invisible person hiding behind other people's lives. I'm myself, and people are listening. But what surprises me the most is the sense of power that comes with it. I realize, bit by bit, that I'm not just telling my story anymore. I'm shaping the narrative. I'm no longer the passive player in my own life. The more I share, the more I'm able to control the conversation, to rewrite the story I've been living for so long. I don't have to beg for attention. I don't have to wait for anyone's approval. I am the story now. The visibility that comes with my newfound voice doesn't just change how the world sees me. It starts to change how the world sees my family. Mira's business, once a flourishing boutique, begins to falter. I don't say anything directly, but as my blog picks up steam, the cracks in her professional facade begin to show. A handful of clients share their own experiences working with her, describing how they felt manipulated and misled. They don't name her directly, but the descriptions are enough. The whispers spread fast, and soon her reputation starts to crumble. She tries to fight back, posting damage control statements on her social media claiming that she's misunderstood, that she's only ever tried to help her clients. But it's too late. The damage is done, and the public sees the truth. It's a bittersweet victory, seeing her fall from the pedestal she'd placed herself on. I don't celebrate it. She's still my sister, in a way, but the person I once trusted is no longer recognizable to me. Her failure, in part, is a reflection of everything she's built on a foundation of lies. And I, in my own quiet way, am the one who exposed it. Then there's my father. His reputation as the respected businessman, the pillar of the community, begins to crack as well. The more I write, the more people start to question his integrity. He'd always been a figurehead, someone who stood above the fray, a person whose success seemed untouchable. But as the truth of our family dynamic emerges, so too does the reality of his manipulation, his control. The whispers grow louder, the articles more pointed. People who once admired him begin to see him for what he really is, a man who used his family to elevate himself. But unlike Mira, who's been publicly exposed, my father is more careful. He never directly responds to the accusations, but he does what he's always done. He retreats into silence, allowing his actions to speak louder than his words. What's more intriguing, though, is how I've started to learn how to manipulate this system. Not through confrontation, not through loud declarations, but quietly, cleverly. I know the ropes, understand the power of perception. I use it to my advantage without ever getting my hands dirty. I write a post here, a subtle comment there, a well-timed share, a strategic ally. These moves are small, but they're effective. They shift public opinion, and they expose cracks that would have remained hidden before. I don't need to shout my truth from the rooftops. I don't need to engage in petty battles. The world is listening now, and the pieces are falling into place on their own. And as they do, I realize something deeper. I've never needed their approval. I've never needed their love. I've never needed them to accept me. I've always had the power to shape my own story. It's only now that I've begun to use it. This is my narrative. This is my voice, and it's only just beginning. The ripple effect of my actions starts small, like the first crack in a dam, unnoticed by most, but then it spreads, unrelenting, until everything around it begins to crumble. Mira's business is the first to feel the impact, and it's swift. One by one, her clients begin to vanish, taking their contracts, their money, and their trust with them. At first, she brushes it off. Just a phase, she tells herself. It'll pass. But the calls stop coming, the inquiries slow to a halt, and the doors that once seemed so welcoming now stand deserted. Within days, her boutique is under investigation. The audit comes as a surprise to her, though I suspect it was only a matter of time. Her accounting practices are scrutinized, her deals questioned, and the discrepancies in her books aren't as easy to hide as they once were. Accounts that were once thriving are frozen, locked away by the authorities as they dig deeper. The clients who had been her lifeblood for years are no longer interested in her services, and the whispers about her business practices turn into harsh rumors, impossible to ignore. It's hard to feel sympathy for her. Mira was always willing to sacrifice me to protect her reputation. She used her charm and her success as a shield to deflect attention from her own failings. Now, that very image she built is shattering, and I can't help but think it's because of the cracks I exposed. But it doesn't stop there. Silas, too, begins to unravel. He's always been the golden boy, the charmer, with connections that extended into every corner of our social circle. But now, his dark dealings, things I had always suspected but never had the proof to expose, are coming to light. Financial mismanagement, fraudulent schemes, under-the-table deals, everything he thought he had hidden behind a veneer of charm and wealth is now in plain view. The first article appears in the local paper. The headline, bold and damning: Silas Harrison, the dark side of a golden reputation. It details his business dealings, the unsavory alliances he's forged, and the legal ramifications that follow. Slowly, his reputation begins to disintegrate. The friends he once thought were loyal to him start backing away, unwilling to be associated with a man who is now publicly exposed for the fraud he is. His network of power crumbles as quickly as it was built, and the quiet whispers behind his back turn into loud condemnations. But perhaps the most satisfying of all is the downfall of my father. His world, once solid, now seems to be teetering on the edge of collapse. For so long, he was untouchable, a figure of authority and respect. But as I continue to share my story, as the blog gains momentum and the truth circulates, it becomes clear that his carefully crafted image is nothing more than a house of cards. The public begins to question his role in all of this. How could a man who prided himself on being an upstanding member of society have allowed such corruption to thrive in his own home? How could he have ignored the signs of betrayal, of manipulation that I had been subjected to for so long? At first, my father tries to reach out to me, his tone almost pleading. He sends texts, emails, long-winded letters in an attempt to rebuild what's broken. But there's no real apology, no reckoning with the truth. Instead, it's all excuses and justifications, a feeble attempt to regain control over a situation that is no longer in his hands. "I know you're angry," he writes in one of his letters, "but you have to understand, everything I did for the family. I've always done what's best for you, for all of us." The irony is suffocating. It's clear he still doesn't understand. He's still trying to play the victim, still trying to control the narrative. But now, the table has turned. He's no longer in a position of power. In the past, I would have been the one to cave, to try and repair the bond, to sweep the damage under the rug in the hopes of keeping the family together. But I'm not that person anymore. The mirror has been held up to them all, and what I see reflected back is a distorted image of guilt, of denial, and of a family that has never really cared for me in the way they should have. I don't respond to any of his attempts. I don't need to. His world is already crumbling around him. The power he once wielded, the control he had over everyone's lives, is no longer his to command. People are starting to see him for who he really is. A man who protected his own reputation at the expense of his children, who buried the truth for his own comfort. For the first time, I understand the true meaning of power. It's not in the loud declarations or the confrontations. It's in the quiet moves, the ability to shift the narrative without raising a finger. The world is watching, and all I've done is expose the truth. The consequences, however, are theirs to bear. They have no leverage anymore, no control over me. The roles have reversed, and now they're the ones scrambling to salvage what's left of their crumbling facades. They've all tried to destroy me in one way or another, whether through neglect, deceit, or manipulation. But in the end, it's them who will pay the price. I have nothing left to lose. They do. And I watch, not with satisfaction, but with a sense of resolution. The damage they inflicted on me will never be undone, but their fall is the only justice I'll ever get. I've learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply living your truth and letting the rest of the world watch as it unfolds. Leaving the family home wasn't a decision I made in haste, nor was it something I thought would be as emotionally draining as it turned out to be. But when I stood at the threshold of that house, the place where I had spent years suffocating under the weight of silence and expectations, I knew it was time. Time to take everything I had learned, the hurt, the betrayal, the lies, and turn it into something that belonged solely to me. I had spent so much of my life caught in a tug of war between the version of myself they wanted me to be and the person I truly was. For the first time, I realized there was no room for that version of me in their world anymore. I didn't fit their mold, and I didn't want to. As I packed my belongings, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders, a sense of clarity growing with each item I boxed up. Each piece I left behind wasn't just a possession, it was a symbolic shedding of the past, a past that for so long had defined who I was. I moved to a small, quiet house by the coast. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No strings attached, no expectations. Just the soothing rhythm of the waves crashing on the shore and the space I needed to breathe freely. The air was salty, and the landscape stretched endlessly in front of me, just like the future I was now building for myself. There were no looming figures here, no silencing voices, no betrayals to confront. Just me, the horizon, and the world I was learning to navigate on my own terms. In the stillness of this new life, I found solace. For the first time in years, I wasn't just existing. I was living. The solitude wasn't loneliness. It was liberation. I didn't need anyone's validation to feel whole. I learned to be content in my own company, to appreciate the quiet moments that once felt suffocating. The sound of my own thoughts, my own reflections became a comforting companion. I no longer feared silence. It was no longer a sign of submission, but a space where I could finally hear myself think. In this peaceful existence, I found the strength to embrace my truth in ways I never had before. My podcast, which started as a small outlet to share my story, began to evolve into something much bigger. I spoke openly about my experiences, the silence, the betrayals, and the journey of finding my voice. I wasn't just talking to a microphone, I was talking to people who had lived through similar experiences. Each message, each comment, each new listener felt like a thread connecting me to others who had suffered in silence. I realized that in sharing my story, I was helping others find their own. The podcast became a community, a space where people could listen, relate, and ultimately heal. I stopped worrying about whether my story was too raw or too real. I stopped pretending to be something I wasn't, and in doing so, I allowed others to do the same. My authenticity was my strength, and I knew it was something that couldn't be taken from me. It was a stark contrast to the manufactured smiles and pretentious conversations of my past. I wasn't hiding anything anymore. I wasn't silencing myself to fit into a mold that had never been made for me. I was finally free to be me. The interactions I had with strangers, with listeners who reached out to me, became the heartbeat of my new life. They didn't know me from before, didn't know the girl who lived in the shadows of her family's lies, but they knew me now, raw, vulnerable, and most of all, real. I embraced the idea that I didn't need to be perfect. I didn't need to be the daughter who kept the peace or the sister who lived in the background. I was a person who had lived through pain, who had emerged stronger on the other side, and who had something valuable to offer. The people I met, both online and offline, were a reflection of the life I had chosen, authentic, unfiltered, and whole. And it was enough. It was more than enough. I thought back to my birthday wish, that moment when I had hoped, more than anything, to be seen, to be noticed, to matter. Now, looking at the life I had built, my own space, my own voice, my own truth, I realized I had gotten everything I ever wanted. But it wasn't because of anyone else. It was because I had finally found the courage to claim it for myself. And as I sat on my porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized that the person I had always been, the one I had tried to bury, was the person I was always meant to be. It wasn't the person my family had wanted, the one they'd tried to shape, mold, and control. It was the version of me that existed beneath all of that, the version that had been silenced for so long. Now, I was living with a deep sense of peace I had never known. I had shed the toxic silence that had kept me confined. I had exposed the truth of my past, and with that truth came a power I had never realized I possessed. I didn't need to look over my shoulder anymore. I didn't need anyone to tell me who I was or what I could be. I had become my own person, whole, powerful, and unafraid. In that moment, as the sound of the waves filled the air, I breathed deeply, not in fear, not in doubt, but in pure, unburdened peace. The chains of my past had broken, and I was free. Looking back, I can see now how silence, once my prison, has transformed into my greatest weapon. For so long, I equated silence with submission. I believed it was my role to remain quiet, to absorb the pain without complaint, to carry the weight of my family's lies without letting anyone see the cracks. But silence isn't always a sign of weakness. Sometimes silence is a form of strength, a choice, not a surrender. The silence I embraced in the past was forced upon me. The silence I choose now is mine, a powerful space where I speak my truth and build my own reality. No longer am I the person who keeps the peace at the expense of my own voice. I've become someone who has learned to use silence not as a tool of submission, but as a space of reflection, empowerment, and clarity. I have learned to speak the truth, and with that truth, I have burned away the illusions of the life that once defined me. The quiet of my past was filled with resentment, guilt, and self-doubt, but now it is filled with purpose, with authenticity, and with peace. Betrayal, in the end, taught me more than any act of love or loyalty ever could. The true consequence of betrayal isn't punishment or retribution, it's clarity. Once I revealed the truth, the layers of deception fell away, and what was left was the stark reality of who I was, who they were, and the undeniable fact that the power I had been seeking had always been within me. Betrayal exposed the lies, but it also revealed my strength, my ability to rise above it all. It wasn't cruel or vengeful. It was liberating. I no longer see the past through the fog of resentment. I see it for what it was, a necessary part of my growth. Betrayal may have been the catalyst, but truth was the force that set me free. I don't need the approval of those who once tried to define me. I've learned to embrace the fullness of my own voice, to trust my instincts, and to let go of the need for validation. I stand here, not as the person who once quietly bore the weight of a family's lies, but as someone who has broken free from that burden. I've discovered that the true power of truth lies not in its ability to wound, but in its ability to heal and transform. And as I look toward the future, with the ocean waves as my constant companion and my voice now fully my own, I know this. I no longer need to hold the fire. I am the fire. I will burn away any illusion that stands in my way, and in doing so, I will continue to walk forward, free, strong, and fully alive.